It's January 3rd, 2006. World of Warcraft's latest patch has just dropped, 1.9, The Gates of Ahn'Qiraj. You hear it comes with a whole new raid over in the desolate and forlorn zone of Silithus. So eagerly you set about it, gathering your buffs and consumables with 39 of your most elite guildies in tow to give those bugs a firm slapping and to collect some perps. Only to get there and find, well, you can't get in. It's locked. Well, there has to be some kind of attunement then. We've had those before. Molten Core had one. You needed to go run through Blackrock Depths and touch a stone outside the instance. Blackwing Lure had one too, and that was pretty fast. You just loot the Quartermaster NPC outside for the letter, and then you can use the teleporter. This one should be pretty fast too, right? As it turns out, there was quite a bit more to this one. Little did players know at the time, but the task that Blizzard had set them to enter AQ 20 and 40 was without a doubt the largest collaborative server-wide event that's ever been introduced to World of Warcraft. And that remains true to this day. It would be the catalyst for so many server-defining moments, and for memories that would stick with people long after their subscription lapsed. This is a story of sweat, griefing, and drama. This is the opening of the gates of Ahn'Qiraj in World of Warcraft. So then, this whole opening the gates stuff, what do we actually need to do here? Well, in essence, it's pretty simple. We need two things to happen. First of all is the war effort must be completed. This is a shopping list of items to end all shopping lists of items. It's a collection of materials that represent the raw cost of setting up Azeroth's combined forces to go up against the minions of an old god. After the war effort is completed, there's a grace period that lasts a couple of days where the materials are transported to the desert, after which the second thing that needs to happen comes in, and that is for a player to have assembled the Scepter of the Shifting Sands and to bang the Scarab Gong outside the creatively named Scarab Wall. This would unlock the gate for the first time in many years, unleashing ancient horrors upon Azeroth. This was called the 10-hour war, or probably more accurately the 10-hour server stress test. This was true both in vanilla and classic. This was 10 hours of chaos as the defenders, or attackers maybe, of AQ flocked out the freshly opened gate upon the denizens of Azeroth. Being there in game for the opening was truly a sight to behold, and there's been nothing quite like it since, and though we can't fully go back to that moment, you can relive it. Thanks to today's sponsor, Displate. In 2013, three guys reimagined the poster into something more durable and lasting. Each product is a high-quality design printed on metal and is hand-signed by the master production in Europe. There are thousands of designs featuring artists from Marvel, Star Wars, D&D, and yep, World of Warcraft, ranging from the classic WoW enjoyers all the way to the more modern game in Dragonflight. You can choose from 3 sizes and a gloss or matte finish, and an extra bonus is that for each purchase, Displate plant a tree in Africa as part of the Forest Garden project. There's also a safe and sturdy magnet mounting system on the wall, which literally takes less than a minute to be set up, so there's no need to go damaging your walls for the sake of decoration, and it also makes them really easy and convenient to swap out whenever you want. Display your passions with pride and save up to 30% when using the discount link in the description, where the discount is applied automatically. Many thanks to Displate for the sponsor today. Let's talk WoW. Simple enough so far, but what do you get from all this? Well, it was no small undertaking. Trust me, when we get into a bit more detail on what this whole opening the gates actually needs, you'll see what I mean. Anyways, rewards. Well, for the war effort, as you handed in materials, you got boxes that gave random greens and a bit of reputation with your faction capital. Anyone could contribute to this, however, from a level 10 handing in some Peace Bloom to a 60 doing a stack of thorium ore. This part was never really about the rewards. What was, however, was the Scepter of the Shifting Sands and banging the gong. This extremely lengthy and unique quest had some amazing epic item rewards, unique cooking recipes, special boss fights, and roleplay events. There was the eternal glory of being the guy on your server who opened the raid. Oh, and there's also this mount you get too, the Black Battle Tank. It's one of the mounts from inside AQ40, but it works outside, and it's black. Nice. The title wasn't available in vanilla. You weren't officially a Scarab Lord until the launch of TBC, when Blizzard added it in. So there's your little introduction to the event. That's what we need to get done, and that's what you get from it. Now for how it really all went down. Let's cover off the war effort first, or the shopping list. Each faction on every single server had a collection of items that had to be turned in before someone was eligible to bang the gong and start off the war. Even if you had assembled a scepter in 24 hours, it meant nothing if the war effort had not been completed. This made it arguably even more of a priority, not only due to the volume of items needed, but also because there was a grace period between you completing the war effort and someone being eligible to sound the gong over in Silithus. Some servers both in vanilla and classic simply didn't have the population to realistically be able to gather all of these items, and went months without being able to access the new raid. In time, Blizzard would add an auto-complete feature that would contribute a certain percentage of items needed every single day, and eventually they'd go on to give people the helping hand they needed and full on set the event to done. Also, there were several realms at the time which were in an awkward position of, whilst being very large, they were only very large on one faction. So if there were 10,000 active Horde players and 100 Alliance players, well, the Horde would go and have to do the war effort for the Alliance. This did happen on a number of realms, which people did through trading through the neutral auction houses and transferring characters with gold to those realms, though I suspect a few less legitimate ways of securing gold were used too here. As for how many items you actually needed, I did a bit of maths on the numbers, and for example, the Alliance needed a total of 2,443,000 individual items, including 90,000 copper bars, 400,000 runecloth bandages, 110,000 medium leather, and 600,000 silk bandages. The Horde had to gather, quite literally, 1 million less items than the Alliance, clocking in at some 1,408,000 items needed in total. This was because Horde had a number of higher quality items that had to be gathered, so it evened out a bit. I'm only joking, of course. The real reason is that Blizzard loves the Horde and wanted it to be easier for them. What started to become noticeable with this event was that each server was a little bit different, and this is something which will very much carry forward when we get around to assembling the Scepter. In fact, each server would go on to have its own story to tell. At the time, I was on Gehennas in EU, which was without a doubt one of the most try-hard servers on the region. We had a lot of the big guilds who had played alternative servers in the past, shall we say, and were more than just prepared for the day to come when the war effort would begin. The Alliance finished the contribution in a matter of days. The Horde side contributed to the war effort by, well, not really doing anything. It wasn't like the Horde was a low population on the server at the time either, they just didn't turn in their items. Why was that? Well, it could have been a number of reasons. They didn't want to feel as though they were helping the Alliance by completing the war effort. Maybe it was to get back at big guilds on the opposite faction, who they knew they could hold back where they couldn't beat them in open world PvP, or maybe it was just to buy some more time. And sometimes you did need extra time, because whilst the other faction might be done, your guild still might be working on your Scepter or Scepters. And it was like a game of chicken, because after the gong is rung, everyone with a Scepter needs to go bang it as well in order to be eligible to get the mount reward. If you miss this 10-hour timing window, well, that is unfortunate, because now you have a Scepter in your bank to look at with zero opportunity to ever redeem it. And no, you couldn't just transfer to another server and ring their gong instead. Blizzard put a hefty 90-day restriction on any gong banging after you transferred, which was a good bit of foresight there. Imagine having someone come out of the blue, ring your gong, AFK for 3 months, and then transfer back. This very much made it into a race and a test of trust between both factions. Remember, in the game, this was a collaborative server-wide event. Is someone going to jump the gun and ring the gong early, or can we hold off until everyone assigned to get one is done? This meant the easiest way to ensure no one did bang it early was just to sit on war effort supplies for as long as you needed to, and a lot of people did that, which would of course in turn make people rather mad, because they wanted to do the raid. So they would organise raids themselves to go gank people farming for the Scepter, they would grief their events, alerts, or even use a spam report feature to trigger bans. It didn't exactly help people finish their Scepter any faster, in fact it did the complete opposite, but hey, I guess it got back at them for not playing the game in the way that other people wanted. How dare you not be handing in your peace bloom? Do it now. So that is the war effort, and in some ways that was the easy bit. Now we need a Scepter of the Shifting Sands. Picture this quest for a moment. It must be done to unlock the new raid. It's near impossible to solo and requires a lot of help or a lot of gold. Each server creates its own time gating for the quest, and it offers rewards only literally a handful of people would see. Everyone wanted to do it. 99.9% of people wouldn't even get past the first part of the quest. There's been many server-wide events in the past. The Isle of Quel'Danas progress depended on server-wide dailies done. Many pre-patch events such as Legion or Dragonflight brought people together, but none of them were even close to the levels of insanity that the Scepter of the Shifting Sands required. Back in original vanilla, the player Galahad from US realm Medivh was the first reported Scarab Lord and the first person to ring the gong. On Blizzard's official 1.9 patch trailer, players from that realm were also accredited with this achievement. What's truly remarkable is that given the efforts players had to go through, and considering the patch launch was on January 2nd, 2006, is that the first gong was rung some 20 days later, on January 22nd, on the previously mentioned realm Medivh. World 2nd was reported from US realm Manaroth on January 27th, and World 3rd from European realm Kael'thas on January 30th. 20 days from zero knowledge of the event to completion, that would be pretty decent timing by today's standards, but nowhere near fast. Of course, today in Classic, players knew exactly what they needed down to the last peace bloom. They had summoning networks set up in advance to get their Scarab Lords around the world, and truces and cross-faction pacts were established in anticipation of the event. If you didn't already know you were a Scarab Lord 6 months before the event happened, you just weren't gonna be one. Where in vanilla, a server may have seen 2 or maybe 3 Scarab Lords, in Classic, well, things were different. We had layering for a start. This meant that several different versions of Silithus coexisted alongside each other, which is vital for farming reputation, as we will soon see. Some servers' factions coexisted and farmed well alongside one another. US realm Fairbanks reported out of 55 people that signed up to go for Scarab Lord, 49 of them were successful. But the realm with the most Scarab Lords by far and away was the Russian server Flamegore, which reported an unreal 90 Scarab Lords completed in total. Not quite as rare of an achievement as it used to be. As for speed of completion, where in vanilla it took 20 days, in Classic on the US realm Sulfuras, the entire war effort and Scepter were completed in a staggering 14 hours. That's some 3.8 million items handed in between both factions, and the entire Scepter questline done within that space of time. Players would have had mailboxes with thousands of pages of items waiting for them in this remarkable feat of preparation. This was done primarily by members of the guild Grizzly, though this won't be the last we will hear of them during this event. Now, I'm not going to cover every single part of the Scepter quest because there's 32 in total, but in essence there's a reputation farm portion of the quest, and then you need to go and find 3 Scepter shards that are held by the green, red, and blue dragonflies. First, we should do a rep farm. This is kind of the filter quest. It was like saying, if you can't do this, just don't bother with the rest of it. What you needed to do was go from hated to neutral with the brood of Nozdormu, and there's actually a cool reason you start at hated too. Being a bronze dragon, Nozdormu saw the future and knew you only pre-ordered the base edition of Dragonflight instead of the epic one, and that made him rather mad. Anyways, hated to neutral is 42k rep, same as neutral to exalted actually, and there was one repeatable way to gain reputation, and that was to complete the quest, the Path of the Righteous. This had you hand in 200 Silithid carapace fragments in exchange for 500 reputation, so we're talking 84 hand-ins total, which doesn't sound too bad, does it? Well, that's until you realize 84 hand-ins means you are required to farm 16,800 Silithid carapace fragments. However, each completion of the quest meant you received an item which would allow allies to also collect these fragments, so the more people you can have working alongside you, the faster you can get one person to neutral, and you really could only work on one person at a time, as in there would be potentially dozens of people that would be farming bugs in small groups spread out across Silithus, then go and trade those fragments to the dedicated player who would then hand them in for the reputation. So I've mentioned these Silithid carapace fragments a few times now. What's up with them? I mean, it's simple enough. There's 3 hives located across Silithus. They're full of elite bugs. You go kill them, you go loot them, you get the fragments. The elites can drop up to 4. First team to 16,800 fragments gets to progress on the next part of the quest. Now this grind in of itself was pretty lengthy, but could be done in a day or two with enough dedication and help. But that wasn't necessarily what made it difficult. What made it hard was the fact that each person who wanted to create a scepter needed 16,800 fragments, and each person would have teams fighting over bug spawns. And in Classic, we have this a little thing called PvP servers. So if you wanted to put a group together and just gank endlessly, well, you could. This is where the preparation work that people had agreed on before the event began to show, and it was also where it became clear who had got in with the right crowd and who was going to be pushed out of being able to farm enough fragments. And unlike original vanilla, so much of the politics were not handled in-game. The advent of Discord allowed players cross-faction to quickly and efficiently communicate between one another. Which guilds are allowed to farm? Which hive will they occupy? How long are they expected to be there? And which players and/or guilds do we not like? Who do we need to watch out for and make sure they can't farm or disrupt other guilds? At this point, the notions of in-game factions were no longer important for the farm. There were those whose names were on the nice list and those who were on the naughty list, and that was kind of it. Cross-faction collusion was more rampant during the Scarab Lord farm days than it ever has been since, and people were not happy about it. How can your own faction sit by and watch as your chain mind-controlled or polymorphed, which in Classic could last over 30 seconds by the way, because good old Classic class balancing? It was unacceptable and against the spirit of the game, some would say. There was even an old terms of service page dug up where it said in blue, clear as day, that it was against the rules to communicate directly with players who are playing characters aligned with the opposite faction. And it wasn't an uncommon sight to see everyone just running past one another. The goal in mind was farming fragments, not PvPing. Though I will say the areas between the hives were like running across a minefield. The amount of players bloodthirsty for some WoW PvP action were massive, and any stragglers would be quickly dispatched. In the end, Blizzard, yeah, actually they just didn't do anything about it. Players colluded between factions and players met their goals, and all was harmonious on Azeroth, or as long as it had to be during the reputation farming, because that was only the beginning of the journey to obtain a scepter. The next part would see relations break down on many servers, as previously established truces had outlived their usefulness, and it only took a few people to bring a whole event to a standstill. On to the shards then. So the red and blue shards weren't actually too bad to get. The red was by far the easiest. You just do a run of Blackwing Lair in under 5 hours. That's literally it. Yeah, not exactly much of a tall order there. The blue had a huge quest line within the quest attached to it, where you had to use a magical fishing bait to attract a shark-like creature called the Wrath of Neptulon. This quest featured defeating open world bosses, invading opposite faction capital, and was the source of World of Warcraft's only epic cooking recipe, Dirge's Kickin' Chimmerok Chops. It also rewarded the Band of Icy Depths, which is the highest value vendor item in the game. Very cool. The problem in many cases was the green shard. There were several issues with this part of the quest. Not only did it involve trying to defeat a boss in the open world that needed a raid to be done, meaning the opposite faction could come and try to AoE you down whilst you were in combat, your own faction could also grief you too. An NPC required for the quest, Keeper Remulos, was part of the Cenarian Circle, a faction which if you wanted, you could toggle as at war with, meaning at any point during the quest, he could get tagged and pulled out of the quest zone, causing it to reset. Or when you were trying to hand the quest in, you could tag him and just run him around in circle for hours, and you had to get somebody from the opposite faction to come and stop this from happening. Things got so bad with griefing on this step of the quest, Blizzard eventually had to step in and make some changes to prevent certain underhand tactics that players were coming up with. But you could also grief for this quest at another point, and this would set the stage for arguably the best storyline from this event, and you couldn't have scripted something better than this. So, as another part of the Green Shard quest, you had to go defeat a Twilight Corruptor in Duskwood. This required a decent sized raid, and it was an open world boss, meaning it's extremely easy to grief attempts. On US server Sulfurus, relations had grown poor between factions and guilds that had colluded efforts to farm materials and to grind fragments in Silithus. Alliance guild Grizzly, remember them, first to complete war effort in only 14 hours, had started to cause problems on the Green Shard part of the quest, holding down the world boss area in Duskwood and preventing any other guilds from being able to advance. Eventually, some reported 200 Horde players combined together and pushed them out of the zone, aiming to score a quick kill on the Twilight Corruptor and advance the quest chain. However, the moment the Horde moved in to pull, the player running for the Scarab Lord on their side received a ban. It came out of nowhere, but almost immediately everyone knew that something was wrong. It appeared as though members of the Alliance had all falsely reported this player at the same time, causing some kind of automated response and for him to receive a suspension the moment it looked like they were finally able to kill the boss. Soon after, a post went up on the classic WoW subreddit, gaining a huge amount of interest for the Sulfurus drama. Not long after, Blizzard replied, saying, "After reviewing the accounts in question, we can confirm the actions did not happen as a result of abuse of the reporting system. While investigating the accounts involved, we did discover evidence of some players who were attempting to file false reports with bad intent and have actioned those accounts for abuse of game systems." Which to this day, I still don't understand what it's supposed to say. So they weren't abusing the report system, they were just filing false reports. I don't know, sounds like abusing the report system to me. Anyways, the prospective Scarab Lord was unbanned not long after, meaning they got to continue progressing the questline. A shared Discord conversation between Horde Guild Amnesty and an ally from Grizzly said it all. The Horde will retaliate. I know how this ends. You do too. And the retaliation was swift. Soon after, the gong sounded in the deserts of Silithus on Sulfurus for the first time, starting the 10-hour war, and more importantly, a timer. Anyone who had the Scepter had to bang the gong too if they wanted their mount and later their title. However, some of the players on the Alliance were yet to turn in all 3 shards at Ahn'Qiraj in Tanaris. This had to be done to actually get the Scepter to complete the quest. And if you remember how this quest line started off, you did a reputation grind from hated to neutral, which meant for the vast majority of the server, this dragon is hostile. What can you do with hostile units? You can keep them in combat forever, so they cannot be interacted with. This was the Horde's revenge for the report ban. Some 1,000 Horde players flooded the zone of Tanaris, holding down the choke into the valley where Ahn'Qiraj resided and kept him in combat for 10 hours straight. Despite the Alliance numbering in the hundreds, they never broke through, and though the 10-hour war raged in Silithus on US realm Sulfurus, it was fought in Tanaris, and it was a victory for the Horde. And that is how the guild that contributed the most towards the world first war event missed out on many Scarab Lord mounts and titles. Then again, should the Horde and Alliance ever have worked together in the first place to farm fragments in Silithus? What about the players who hadn't done anything wrong and just needed to hand in during the 10-hour war? Did they deserve to lose their mounts too? You just don't get this in other games, do you? Each and every server will have their own story around the war effort, their own drama, the betrayals, the politics. Classic was certainly rough around the edges, but did it ever create stories and characters? It's reasons like this why we can look back and realize this game is nearly 20 years old and people keep coming back to it. And that is the story of the opening of Ahn'Qiraj in Classic WoW. Let me know how things went down on your server, and if you like the video, drop a like. It helps out a bunch and it takes a moment. That's all from me though. As always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.